The world as we know it runs on fossil fuels and sunlight. Without energy from the sun, the ecosystem would collapse. Without fossil fuels, most civilizations would also collapse. Say what you will about renewable energy, but oil is the blood pumping through the heart of industry. For decades, the quest for fuel has driven crime, business, and government. Fossil fuels are a tool for progress and a means of oppression. But the question on everyone's mind is this: what happens when we run out?
The early days of oil were nearly the opposite of today, in that the supply was almost infinitely greater than the demand. Formed millions of years ago, oil remained beneath the earth, largely untapped until relatively recently. Oil now plays a major role in the ever-overlapping realms of technology, business, and geopolitics, and from all indications, Guyana is well positioned to become a large exporter of this vital commodity. This week on Dorado Shines, we will take a closer look at Guyana's prospects of becoming an oil-producing country and how key agencies have been preparing for news of a large-scale discovery. In its World Petroleum Assessment 2000, the United States Geological Survey estimated the Guyana-Suriname Basin could hold close to 15.2 billion barrels of oil. A number of companies have been conducting exploration activities in Guyana, and experts in the field believe that it is only a matter of time before a discovery is made. This seems quite plausible when one considers that credible reports such as those outlined by the United States Geological Survey points to the likelihood of Guyana having one of the largest yet-to-be-discovered oil reserves in the world.
When we talk about the oil and gas sector of Guyana, we have to talk of it with deliberate patience. I know it's been a number of years that we've been promoting and, I suppose, facilitating operations in the sector with a view that we would get to the point where the drilling activities result in commercial access.
In 2012, safety concerns caused the CGX Energy to halt drilling operations at its Jaguar 1 well offshore Guyana. However, despite this setback, the company is forging ahead with confidence that a major discovery is imminent.
The program since the Repsol and the CGX wells, the Jaguar and the Eagle wells I'm talking about, those projects are continuing. Both groups of companies, both companies, CGX and Repsol, are in place in their respective blocks, continuing with their exercises. And we have had, from Repsol in particular, another SWAT of 3D seismic done to help with the delineation of some of the prospects that they want to pursue, in addition to and complementary to the Jaguar target and the Jaguar prospect. And the CGX is in a similar mode.
Oil giant ExxonMobil is also conducting exploratory work offshore Guyana.
We also have Exxon that has been an operator there for some time, and they have been ramping up their activities. And we're very hopeful, again, that very soon we could see some a reemergence of some action in the offshore.
Government will spearhead an effort that will result in the capital city, all other towns and rural villages implementing a Clean Up My Community action plan that will address the collection and removal of garbage, as well as the reporting of residents who irresponsibly dispose of their garbage. Investment in the oil and gas sector may lead to direct business such as engineering, maintenance, fabrication, barging, towing, and trucking, all which call for new and improved port facilities, industrial yards, air services, security, surveillance, and intelligence. Recognizing the benefits an oil discovery could have on the country's economy and development, Guyana has been taking steps to ensure investors in the sector are well received and facilitated.
Companies have been able to come here and work and do so competently without any great issues because we're facilitative. And I think the word has gotten around. So we continue to promote and get our message out there that we're a viable place for petroleum exploration and commerciality at some stage.
As can be expected, the opening of the petroleum sector does not come without its challenges. GGMC is aware of this and is continuously working to address potential shortcomings.
I would hazard that in very short time, if 2 or 3 of these companies decide they're going to drill at one time, that we could find ourselves short of feet on the ground to do a proper monitoring exercise. At the same time, what happens when those wells are done and you don't see another well for another 3 years? You know, what happens there? So it's been a balancing act to try and do that. And then again, too, for the petroleum sector, I believe experts and professionals in that sector, they're very marketable. So they're not going to sit around waiting for things to happen in Guyana. If even we train them, they're not going to sit around for things to happen in Guyana and opportunities are elsewhere. So we've had to juggle that. And I think we've not been doing too badly. Right now we understand that there is, we understand what is imminent, and we are working to make sure that we have enough of the kinds of persons with the kinds of qualifications and exposure to deal with that.
Government has allocated $1 billion to the Clean Up My Country initiative, of which the sum of $500 million will be dedicated to immediate efforts to clean the capital city. The Petroleum Division of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission is the local agency involved in exploring for hydrocarbons. The Guyana Geology and Mines Commission has also been making efforts to address the lack of skilled labor by providing opportunities for employees to acquire specialized training at the tertiary level.
We've had a scholarship program, a very healthy arrangement with the University of Guyana, where we send our students, well, we send suitable and qualified secondary school applicants who have passed our screening to UG to do their first degrees in whether it's geotechnical engineering, mineral resources, or environmental areas. Those are the 3 main. We're encouraging a resurgence in the interest of mining engineering, and we're hoping that that will take off. And we have been supporting that faculty at UG and their efforts in that regard.
Opportunities for employment in the sector for those with specialized skills go beyond GGMC, and this is something students must be aware of.
We shouldn't be thinking that the sector is only a sector for GGMC, which I think is something that people don't realize. So that you'd find that students that will go to UG and have an interest in geology and such will always be looking, unfortunately, to GGMC or the limited scope of the mining sector for employment. And I think we need to be a little bit more broad-minded as to where these skills can be applied. I would say that for example, negotiating with one of the companies not too long ago for a petroleum agreement, that it was quite an interesting discussion on some of the matters that pertain to taxation. I am no expert in taxation, and we have our experts from the GRA there. But curious enough, one of the experts on taxation that came was actually a petroleum engineer.
Citizens, businesses and institutions will be tasked with ensuring that their garbage is properly discarded in appropriate receptacles. Efforts will be made to enlist the support of the private sector and other institutions to assume greater involvement in helping to maintain the environment in which they operate. Numerous major oil companies have been exploring for oil and gas in the Guyana-Suriname basin, including Anadarko, Apache, Exxon, Inpex, Cosmos, Murphy, Repsol, Shell, Statoil, Total and Tullow. The need for Guyanese to play a meaningful role in the development of the sector cannot be overstated and must be addressed if the full benefits of an oil discovery is to be realized.
If for some reason we are unable to have a proper integration of Guyanese into these operations when development occurs and so on, then we will always be on the back foot to take advantage of what these things mean development-wise for Guyana. And that is something that I know, for example, the province of Newfoundland had grappled with for several years before they got a formula that they were happy with to move forward, and now it's a success story.
While current laws and regulations work effectively in the context of what exists now in the sector, an expanding petroleum industry would result in major changes.
I know right now, for example, our systems for dealing with taxation and so on are working for what we have now, but I believe that those financial instruments that would have to be modernized significantly to deal with what petroleum revenues and just the petroleum business would be bringing to Guyana.
Opportunities for support services in the sector must also be vigorously pursued.
We must make sure that the opportunities that are present, whether it's in agriculture, in other industries, spin-off industries, in the linkages that relate to the petroleum sector, those opportunities remain wide open so that you can bring to bear in other sectors what is being preferentially provided in the petroleum sector, because the petroleum sector normally comes with a high level of technology. We can't escape it. The technology, cutting-edge technology normally comes with that sector. And I'm sure that the very smart people will be able to, so to speak, piggyback to ensure that the enterprises, that other enterprises, whether they're small or medium scale or whatever, other enterprises can take advantages of the footprint of the better technology and information services and so on that petroleum would bring, and of course the expertise that will come to the shores.
Oil is concentrating millions of years of sunlight that fell all over the planet into a liquid, and then we can take that liquid, and it's so easy for us, we can burn it. We're using it up in, the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, we've used up nearly half of, I mean, that's incredible to me, how fast we've done it and how long it took to make this stuff.
Ever mindful of damage to the environment, Guyana has been taking careful steps to ensure the exploitation of its natural resources is done in a sustainable manner. In the case of oil exploration, companies must adhere to strict regulations.
The role of the EPA is to ensure that all developmental projects that will have an impact on the environment are authorized with the EPA. So through the Environmental Protection Act and its regulations, the Environmental Protection Authorization regulations, these companies are to be authorized by us. So they come in, they make an application. Right now for exploration companies, the agency would recommend a strategic environmental assessment be conducted. This will look at the potential impacts of any exploration activities and develop monitoring protocols.
The EPA Act of 1996 states that any project that may have environmental impacts on the environment must submit an application for environmental authorization to the EPA, after which an environmental permit will be granted based on our evaluation of the project.
By 2030, flooding has been estimated to cost $150 million annually, and extreme events such as the flooding of 2005 could result in $0.8 billion in losses, affecting 320,000 people. The need to identify and develop land away from the coastal plain has been included in the Low Carbon Development Strategy as hinterland adaptation measures to be undertaken in the period 2012 to 2015. Offshore oil exploration began in the Guyana-Suriname basin in late 2007, after Guyana's long-time maritime boundary dispute with Suriname was resolved. The EPA carefully collects and examines information from each company to ensure all the necessary requirements are met before an environmental authorization is granted.
So there's an application form for environmental authorization. The company would submit this with necessary information, like the project summary and the prospecting license from GGMC and so on. After that, it is determined based on the information that is submitted to the agency that a strategic environmental assessment be conducted. This is usually done, terms of references are usually developed with the company and the EPA, with consultations with necessary stakeholders, other sector agencies, and if there are any communities that are will be affected by the project.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is creating conditions for the responsible and sustainable exploitation of the country's natural resources. Operators are encouraged to mine with the environment in mind. The United States Geological Survey ranks the Guyana-Suriname Basin second in the world for prospecting among the world's unexplored basins, and 12th for oil among all the world's basins, explored and unexplored. Routine checks are made by the agency on the company's operations in order to ensure that there is full compliance.
Once a permit is issued, the Environmental Management Compliance Division would take over the permit, and they would have, remember, a strategic environmental assessment would have a monitoring protocol attached to it. So once that is handed over to that division, the compliance division, they would check with the company to ensure with doing regular monitoring depending on the protocol, whether it's monthly, biannual, however it is. But with exploration activities, it's usually monthly, and the company is supposed to submit information to us on water quality on a monthly basis.
Experts believe the environmental impact of petroleum is often undesirable because it is toxic to almost all forms of life.
Some of the environmental impacts that you can have from unauthorized exploration activities would obviously be water, impacts to water, marine life. You can have, in the event, of blowouts on the rig, you can have impacts to human life as well. And you can have social impacts such as conflicts with fishermen out at sea.
Some of the impacts can also be negative for the company in terms of the publicity. If something negative were to happen during an exploration activities without the necessary authorizations from the relevant regulatory agencies, then it will put the company in a bad light and will block future investment. If, for instance, Guyana does strike oil, it can hamper their chances of coming back to the country to do business. So that in that sense, they will also be impacted.
Polluting waterways and vegetation through mining activities is an offense. Be responsible. Protect the environment. Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment. The government of Guyana is working with the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, EITI, to implement the transparency principles of the EITI process in the hydrocarbon sectors. Looking ahead to when oil is discovered in commercial quantities in Guyana, the EPA will be playing a leading role in granting companies the necessary permits for drilling. This process, the agency says, is transparent and takes into consideration input from all stakeholders.
The public is invited to make comments. We have scoping meetings. All of the stakeholders are actively involved. So it's a very transparent process, and that will allow for an effective decision-making process.
While all efforts will be made to ensure drilling and other oil extraction activities are conducted within safety guidelines, the EPA is also fully prepared to deal with any resulting mishap.
In the eventuality of a potential oil spill, the company will be held liable to ensure that there's cleanup of all, if there is an oil spill. And that process will be overseen by the EPA and, of course, the government of Guyana, through the government of Guyana. I am aware that we are working to ensure that proper policies are developed for the sector, the oil and gas sector, and there are currently discussions ongoing at the ministerial level and sector agency level to develop these policies to ensure that there is sound management for the oil and gas sector.
Well, if you don't qualify what soon is, I would say I'm very confident.
There is no doubt that Guyana's emerging oil and gas industry has the potential to change the lives of its citizens. Oil and gas development, however, is a highly challenging undertaking that is sensitive to political, social, and environmental factors. Its success, therefore, calls for a high level of transparency, honesty, and well-articulated policies. To learn more about the new litter prevention regulations, visit the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment's website at www.nre.gov.gy and click on the link Pick It Up Guyana.
Welcome to Guyana, the gateway to South America. A pristine haven of abundant natural resources. We are a nation born in sacrifice and enriched by our togetherness. When we play, we celebrate every effort. When we celebrate, we salute more than success. We exude our right to move forward.
Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of Dorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for Dorado Shines and start watching. Or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates. You've been watching Dorado Shines. Do join us again next week for another program. Until then, do remember that we all have a role to play in protecting the environment.